I'll tell you something right up front. Sometimes a place will test just how much you're willing to fight for peace. I'm not talking about a barroom brawl or some Wild West shootout. No, what I walked into was quieter, colder, and if you ask me, way more personal. You think you know your own land, your own neighbors, and then one day you look up and realize the battle's already landed on your porch. My name's Nicholas Brooks, but for a long time most folks around Whispering Pines just called me the guy on the hill. I guess I liked it that way. I'm not the sort to chase attention, not big on speeches, and I'll take a night by the fire over a gala any day. But a while back, I ended up right in the center of a storm I never asked for. It started with a letter. Isn't that always the way one little envelope in your whole life tilts sideways? But let me back up. Years before any of this started, I'd made something out of a wild patch of hillside that nobody thought much of. Where most folks saw nothing but rocks, thorns, and a scraggly line of pines, I saw possibility. I poured years into that land, money, sweat, a couple of busted knuckles, and probably more than a few bad words. Built a real community, too. Parks, trails, a little lake, and even a rec center where you could swim in the summer, all of it meant to outlast me. Only thing was, I never put my name up in lights. I didn't need a plaque. Just wanted to see families living good, honest lives. After it was all built, I kept a quiet corner for myself, a sloping bit of earth up above the tree line where the sun came up soft and gold every morning. I figured after all the years I'd earned a peaceful spot to watch the world spin. My wife, my boys, and me, weekends full of grilling, fishing, listening to the wind in the branches. You ever have a place like that? One you think nobody can touch? Turns out nothing's ever really untouchable. Not if there's a homeowners association sniffing around convinced every inch of ground needs a stamp of their approval. Whispering Pines HOA was supposed to be a committee, maybe keep the streetlights working, run the 4th of July picnic. That was before Karen Baker got her claws into it. Now, if you've never met someone like Karen, count your blessings. She strutted around in heels that could punch holes in concrete, always with a clipboard pressed to her chest like a shield. Never a hair out of place, never a moment without an opinion about your grass, your shutters, your life. She believed rules weren't just suggestions. They were the law. Her law. And anyone not towing the line, well, you were a problem waiting to happen. At first, it was almost funny. I'd get these letters, polite official, dripping with sugar, and toss them straight in the trash. I wasn't part of the HOA. Never had been. My plot was marked out years before the first mailbox went up down the hill. But Karen, she didn't like boundaries. Not on a map, not in her head. One night I'm flipping steaks by the grill, my youngest chasing fireflies, and I spot this little drone buzzing above the treetops, camera angled right at my porch. Not subtle. 5 minutes later, black SUV pulls up, headlights off, but the engine rumbling. Karen steps out, all sharp edges and frost, a pair of muscle-bound flunkies trailing behind her. She comes to my gate, taps her clipboard, and says, "It's time you joined the community, Mr. Brooks, for harmony's sake." I just leaned against the fence and smiled. "Karen," I said, "I like my Harmony a little less crowded." That didn't sit well. Not one bit. Her smile dropped faster than the temperature, and she promised there'd be consequences for those refusing to cooperate. I shrugged. She stomped back to her car. Gravel spat out from the tires, and for a second I almost laughed. But you know how it is when someone like Karen says there'll be consequences, they don't mean maybe. Next weekend, another letter. This one thicker. Legalese all over, threats of ordinance violations for living too close to the HOA border. Apparently my proximity was now a crime. It was ridiculous. But underneath that absurdity, I could feel something shifting, like the land itself was tightening up, waiting for the next blow. That's when I brought in Michael. Now, Michael's my attorney, but more than that, he's an old friend, the kind of guy who'll tell you if you've got spinach in your teeth, even if it ruins your day. He started digging. It didn't take him long. Turns out Karen had run the old board out on a rail, stacked her people in every seat, jacked up the dues, and fined half the neighborhood into submission. The rec center, she'd booked it for emergency board meetings and luxury retreats on the HOA's dime. By now, the stories were pouring in. Young couple bankrupted over the color of their front door. Widows shamed out for letting her roses grow wild. Kids told not to play ball in the street unless they wanted a violation notice taped to their bikes. You could feel the fear in the air. Whispering Pines was turning into something ugly, and Karen thought she could expand her kingdom one more plot at a time. And here's the twist no one saw coming, not even me. One chilly morning, Karen shows up at my gate with a man in a police uniform. Only there's something off about the whole thing. Cruiser's too shiny badge, a little too plastic. The officer says I'm trespassing on my own land. He flashes a map that looks like it came from a kid's coloring book. Talks about expanded boundaries and municipal code compliance. Behind the door, Michael's got his phone out, recording every word. I play along, act nervous, stall for time. And just when the cop starts reaching for his cuff sirens, the real kind, county deputies roar up my driveway, lights blazing, and suddenly the tough guy's all pale and shaky hands up in the air. Karen tries to bolt, but she doesn't make it 10 feet. Turns out she hired a fake cop, forged half a dozen documents, and thought nobody would notice. She underestimated just how fast the world catches up with you when you push too far. By the time the sun set, Karen and her pretend policeman were in cuffs, and her cronies weren't far behind. News spread like wildfire. Whispering Pines' queen was dethroned. Board members marched out in front of neighbors they'd spent years bullying. Charges everything from conspiracy to harassment to flat-out fraud. People who'd been afraid to speak up started coming forward. There were stories everywhere, kids, families, folks who'd been run off their own land. For once, people listened. When the trial came, it was a circus. Cameras out front, reporters trying to shove microphones in every direction. But me, I just slipped in the side door, sat in the back, and watched the show. Karen tried to act like she was misunderstood, that it was all for the community's good. But you could see it, the armor was gone, replaced by a hollow, desperate shell. The verdict was swift. Guilty. Fines. Restitution. Real time behind bars. The others got their share of punishment too. I walked out of that courthouse into sunlight so bright it hurt my eyes, but for the first time in months, I felt the knot in my chest loosen. Justice Karma, if you like, had finally shown up, and she wasn't wearing a pantsuit. After all, that Whispering Pines started to breathe again. You could feel it. The new board was made up of real neighbors, folks who actually cared. They scrapped the worst rules, held meetings out in the open, let people talk without fear. The fines stopped. The threats ended. Front porches filled up with flowers and laughter. Kids ran wild again. People started waving to each other. Me, I kept my spot on the hill. Same view, same quiet mornings. Only now the silence felt different, warmer, settled. I'd walk the trails at sunset, listen to the wind rattling the pines, let it all soak in. Sometimes Michael would stop by with a bottle and a few jokes, and we'd sit talking about nothing, the kind of peace you earn the hard way. And every once in a while I'd get asked why I never told the community who really built their parks, paid for their pool, kept the lights on. Truth is, I never needed anyone to know. It wasn't about gratitude. It was about keeping something good alive, about proving you don't have to put your name on everything to matter. As for Karen, last I heard her name was a warning, a story people told their kids about the dangers of too much power in the wrong hands. The neighborhood moved on. Folks learned to stand up for each other at least a little more. And me, I got my peace back. So here's my question for you, since you stuck around this long. When power goes unchecked, when one person can twist the rules to suit themselves, what would you do? Would you stand by, or would you dig in no matter the cost? Maybe you've got your own battle scars, your own story about fighting for what's right. I'd like to hear it. Drop your thoughts below, or share a time you stood your ground and saw justice win out, no matter how small the victory. Because if there's one thing I know now, it's that the quietest wins are sometimes the ones that last. And that right there is enough for me.